to NCBI Labs. Well, it's December 1st and we've made it back to level 3 and things are beginning to ease up a little bit at least. There's even the prospect of us leaving our own counties in a few weeks' time as well, so things are looking up. But of course, with the move to level 3, the regularity of our live events is going to be changing as well. As we mentioned at the start of our second lockdown, our live events at the moment are increasing or decreasing depending on what level we're at nationwide. So with the move to level 3, our live events are going to be moving back to every 2 weeks. So that'll mean that our next live event will be on December 15th. That's 2 weeks' time. And that'll be our last live event this year. And we have big plans for that, which we'll tell you a little bit more about later on. But first of all, what have we got lined up for you today? Well, in a moment, we're going to be talking to Áine O'Rourke on our regular Meet the Teams piece. She'll be telling us, at least I presume she'll be telling us a little bit about why Cork is absolutely the best place in the world. It's not quite what the interview is about, but I'm sure it's going to come up at some point. A little bit later on, we're going to be talking to someone whose career path changed somewhat when they were diagnosed with RP, but how they used that change of direction to contribute to the development of voice synthesis. I'll get my mouth around that, voice synthesis in the Irish language. Well, that's our interview with Ronan McGuirk a little bit later on in our Seeing It Your Way piece. And as well, we're going to be talking to our panel today about streaming devices, particularly the Amazon Fire TV Stick, the new Google Chromecast, and Apple TV as well. We'll be discussing what sets them apart from each other, but also particularly how they stack up when it comes to accessibility. So that's what we're going to be talking about on our show today. And of course, as usual, if you have any questions that you'd like our panel to answer, you can email us at labs@ncbi.ie, or if you want to make a comment or you have a question for us, you can use the Q&A panel on the right hand side if you're connecting through Teams. First of all, let's talk to this week's guest on our Meet the Team section. Áine O'Rourke, you're very welcome.
Thanks, Jude, and thanks for having me. Happy to talk about Cork, as you say, anytime, but just let's not mention how COVID has affected the sports in Cork at the moment. Happy to talk about anything else.
I knew it had come up somewhere, Áine. I didn't even have to ask a question and it came up. Very good. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Áine, a little bit about maybe your background or life before NCBI.
Sure, no problem. Prior to working with NCBI, I've worked in a few different organisations. I started my career in the HSE, or the Southern Health Board as it was known back then, in the Department of Nursing at CUH. So this was back when the nursing was carried out on site in the hospitals before it moved to the current syllabus in the university campus. So I was there for a few years, and then I moved to the orthodontic unit. So part of my role in the nursing department was to help set up a new system. So again, that was happening in the orthodontic unit. So I naturally slotted into a role there, and I worked on SAME for a few years. I fancied a change then, and I saw a role advertised in the Bon Secours Hospital working with the occupational health team. So I actually moved out of the health board and moved into the private health industry working in the Bon Secours. I love this role. In the occupational health team, part of the process that we completed was the pre-employment occupational health medical check. So it meant that we were part of induction and pre-employment health assessment for everybody. So anybody joining the hospital, we got to meet them first. And in fact, it's where I met my now husband, Kevin. He started as a chef in the Bonds. I met him on his very first day, and the rest, as they say, is history. Kevin and I then actually, after it was about a year, he was in on a maternity leave cover contract, which was coming to an end, and we got the travel bug. We decided to take some time out, leave jobs. Our parents were like, oh, private pensionable jobs, but it was back in the Celtic Tiger days, just before the recession hit, so we did it. And looking back, I'm glad we did, because I don't think the opportunity would have arisen again, to be honest.
You got to see the world a bit, did you?
Yeah, I never saw it coming, but look, we took the opportunity. We went traveling. We just did a mini little trip around the world. We absolutely loved it. When I came back from traveling, I started work in Pepsi then. I was PA to the general manager, which was, again, a very interesting role. It was complete change because it wasn't healthcare, but I learned so much of the business side of things, working with the executive team. I really, really loved that. And I loved the bridge I had to like countries all over the world. I started to learn Spanish at the time to converse with colleagues we had in Latin America, and I had the basics down to a T, but it's something that I've just let go, and I'm always intending on refreshing it, and it's always top of the New Year's intentions. So hopefully I might do it now this year. We could have our next interview then, Jude, in Espanol.
That's it, yeah. Well, I'll go
through
to
the Naviland team, maybe, that you had on there a few weeks ago.
That's it.
Look, I love my time at Pepsi, but after it was about 6 years, I was looking for a change, and voluntary redundancies were on offer. I availed the same. After that, I worked with Bord Gáis, again with the executive team in GasLink. It was very interesting, but it was a fixed term role because GasLink was coming to an end. So it was really, really interesting to learn that kind of side of things and how they were closing a business. It was when Bord Gáis separated between Bord Gáis Energy and what is now Gas Networks Ireland. So it was very much part of that transition, that period. So I learned an awful lot there. It was a fixed purpose, and it actually worked out great for me because I was going on maternity leave when it was coming to an end. So it just timed perfectly. I was on maternity leave then with my first little boy, and after that I joined NCBI. So I've pretty much been with the NCBI ever since.
Oh, very good. So roughly when was that? How long have you been with NCBI? And I think I know the answer to this bit, but where roughly are you based as well?
Yeah, you'll never guess where I'm based. No, I'm obviously based down here in Cork. I joined NCBI back in March. In 2015, so it was just after Paddy's Day. I originally joined on a part-time basis, covering the reception in the Southern Regional Office in Cork. So I'm based in Ballincollig, and the office at the time was too. So I was looking for something part-time. Prior to that, I'd always worked full-time, but after having my little boy, I just wanted something part-time and something local just to improve work-life balance, and it just slotted perfectly. I was so delighted when I saw the job advertisement that I got it. I was so happy. It was a great team to join. I loved meeting new people. You met new people daily, people coming into the office and learning about all the different opportunities provided by NCBI. I just really enjoyed it. So I was in that role it was just over a year, and NCBI then they were introducing a new customer relationship management, a CRM tool. So basically it's the database where we record all our information. Now, as I mentioned previously, in the nursing department and the orthodontic unit, I had been involved in setting up new systems. So and my education background involves completing courses in IT, network systems, and I did a HDIP in learning development and work-based training as well. So with that experience, I moved into a role with NCBI supporting the rollout of this new CRM system. It's a Salesforce system, and I've been in that role ever since. I was that's about 5 years now. I joined the labs team. That's why I'm talking to you here today, one of the labs team. I joined the labs team only May of this year on return from my second maternity leave. 2 maternity leaves, 1 boy, 1 girl. I'm done now. No more maternity leaves for me.
No more big changes.
They always say never, but in my 40s now, I'm done with maternity leaves. So since joining the labs team, my role has taken a wider focus, really. I was very much focused on the regional services side of the CRM and Salesforce, but now since joining the labs team, it's a wider focus, and I'm engaging with staff and colleagues from most departments within the NCBI, which I really find interesting, and I love having the opportunity to meet new people that I wouldn't have met before in my previous role.
Very good. It's actually really interesting just hearing about some of that sort of work that's going on, because previously we've talked to members of the team about maybe initiatives that might be quite visible to the public, but there's clearly a lot of work that's going on behind the scenes in NCBI when it comes to technology as well. And you're obviously involved in quite a lot of that by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I mean, my role would involve supporting the NCBI staff with any of their CRM queries or training requests, but also the CRM is where we generate our reports and our statistics. And I'm very much working on that at the moment and working on how we can develop the system to further meet the needs and requirements of all our departments so that we're all working off the same system. So our CRM, our customer relationship management system, it's where we capture all our data, and it's really the tool that allows staff record all their activity, which allows us to then monitor delivery of service provision, and it kind of helps us to monitor and maintain that across all of NCBI really.
So it's a huge part of improving the service then. So that's really interesting. That's what you've got your teeth into at the moment. Anything else particular that you're working on?
Well, there is a change to the current edition of the Salesforce CRM that we are using at the moment. So it's due for rollout early next year to all members of staff. So this is one of the key focuses that I'm working on at the moment. I need to test the functionality to ensure that it captures all the current data processes that we use. I'm also working on updating some support and navigation guides for staff so that they're familiar with the new system. It's basically the same functionality and system. It's just an upgrade to the current tool. So I'm working with a focus group of representatives from all different teams within the NCBI on same. So it's all kind of hands on deck really to make sure that it's a smooth transition to the new update. So the update is called Lightning Edition. We're currently in the classic version. So with it being called Lightning, let's just hope it doesn't mean there's a storm brewing, Jude. I'm sure it won't. I'm sure it'll all be smooth and we'll be well prepared. So that's one of the key things that I'm working on at the moment. And as I mentioned before, it's kind of given me the opportunity to work with representatives from all departments within NCBI, which is good, really. Supporting the people that support our service users really is kind of my key role in the background.
Well, that's brilliant, Áine. And there's clearly an awful lot that's going on behind the scenes in technology in NCBI, and it's good to know that that kind of infrastructure is always being developed and improved as well, so that the service can continue to improve as well. So thanks very much for joining us, Áine. All the best with the rollout of Lightning next year as well.
Thanks, Jude, and well done on all the live events to date. I look forward to the big one now on the 15th. Let's hope there's a few bloopers or something for the full year.
The bloopers reel, we run that live every week at 2:30. This is the bloopers reel, Áine. I should have told you that before.
Thanks, Jude. Thanks, everybody, and well done to all the team working on the live events.
Very good. Very good. So that was Áine O'Rourke, and I hope you're enjoying the regular Meet the Team piece. It's nice just to be able to introduce members of the team and see all the different aspects of the work that's going on there. Now, moving on with today's show, one of the interesting recent technology releases is the update to Google's Chromecast device. And if you use the first iteration at all, then there are a few kind of key differences with this one, but it kind of got us thinking here at Labs just about the various different steaming devices. Well, streaming devices might be better ones to talk about at the moment.
One will do your Brussels sprouts and the other will do your TV, Jude.
I hope you've done your research on steaming devices.
Not quite, no, another few weeks yet.
Top 5 streaming devices. Yeah, so let's try that again. It got us thinking about various different streaming devices and how useful they are. And crucially as well, how accessible those different streaming devices are. So we have Daniel and JP with us this week to talk a little bit about the Chromecast, as well as 2 other devices, the Amazon Fire TV Stick and Apple TV as well. So first of all, maybe we could just come to Daniel. What are these devices for essentially?
Well, the streaming devices, as you mentioned there, there's a few different manufacturers out there. The popular ones being the Amazon Fire Stick, Google Chromecast, and the Apple TV. They're probably the 3 guys that have the lion's share of the market, and they're an ideal fit, for your TV, and particularly if you don't have a smart TV. They effectively turn a TV into a smart TV. And basically they hook in to a small little device. They can be kind of in a stick format or a dongle format, and they just simply connect in onto a vacant HDMI port on the back of your TV, and you supply it in with a plug, just pretty much like a mobile phone charger, just to keep the power going to it, and that comes back from your electricity supply. So that's all you've kind of need, and obviously Wi-Fi then for internet connectivity. So that's what you need. And what you can do then with these devices is you can stream video content, play music, you can access YouTube, you can even do some of the live TV stuff on it. Your RTE player can be streamed, and they also work in conjunction. Let's say if you had a smartphone or a tablet as well. Now these are not essential for the operation of them, but you can, if you're sitting down on the couch and flicking through YouTube, or if something good comes on Facebook Live, maybe your favorite local band are playing live on Facebook these nights, and you can just hit the little cast button at the top of the video, and boom, it comes straight onto your TV. So it's very, very handy. They also can link in, be controlled from, remember we were speaking about our smart speakers, our Alexas and our Google Home Minis. Those guys, you can ask them to switch on the TV, put on YouTube and play a song, stuff like that. It's really very clever the way it works from that regard. And the new iteration of the Google Chromecast actually now comes with a remote control, has its own storage space. Now they advertise 8 gig, but you actually get about 4.4 gig to use. Yes. So you can store a couple of apps on there, and do certain things as well. I know with the Chromecast one, it integrates somewhat with the Google Duo app. And there's, I suppose, think of WhatsApp here, that you can do video calls and all that through it. So you can send up if you're on a video call, send a picture up onto the big screen TV. Really class.
Yeah. Interesting. We'll come back to that in just a minute, actually, to just the differences with the new Chromecast. Just if you're talking about one of these devices, basically, from what you're saying there, when you plug this into the back of your TV, you turn on your TV, you've got an interface there that you can connect with a lot of different apps all at once, but it will just work through your remote control then. Is that it?
With the new Google one, yes, but if you have, there's 4 generations, I suppose, to make this a little bit clearer. There's 4 generations of the Chromecast out there, and the 4th generation recently being launched, which came with a remote, whereas the other ones didn't. So I suppose with the generation 1 to 3, you'd need a smartphone ideally to cast stuff through it. Now you could cast from the Google Chrome browser on your laptop. That would work. But it would be best paired with another device, and the speaker can ask because they're all connected to one Wi-Fi system. So you could say to your speaker, "Hey, Google, turn on Netflix and put on the latest episode of whatever show you're watching," and it will do that.
Yeah. So this is really kind of integrating with the whole smart home idea that you've got.
Yeah.
Kind of one central hub. Excellent.
Yeah. So I suppose it's like the Nest system where you say to it, "Hey, turn on the light in the living room."
Yeah. So it's kind of part of that whole setup, I suppose. If you have a smart TV already, is what we just mentioned there maybe the main advantage of having a Chromecast or any of these other devices, is that it connects up to the smart home, or is there any real difference between that if you've already got a smart TV?
You see, yes and no. The more modern smart TVs are, they're quite good and they're kept up to date, and even some of the smart TVs are coming with their native Android system. There's TVs out there that are called smart as well, but they're not. You're not your raw Android system.
Yes.
And even for most people now, like the likes of Netflix and all those will be done really well. But I think it's maybe where you get, you're looking for your RTE player or your TG4 player or something to work. it doesn't come across as well on some smart TVs. I would prefer the Chromecast system, to be quite honest. But look, there's people out there with a smart TV and they just hit, there's even a button on the TV remote for Netflix and NDR, and that's fantastic, and that works. But it's down to manufacturer of the smart TV, how good they have, how smart with their smart TV, if that makes any sense.
So how long roughly have these devices been around, like in general, this kind of iteration of technology?
I think these have been around for a good number of years, Jude, and I'm looking at the 3 devices that we have today. Daniel mentioned there a moment ago the Chromecast, Fire Stick, Apple TV set-top box. So we can go back to 2013. Actually, the first generation Chromecast was released. As Daniel mentioned, they were up on our 4th generation with the Chromecast with Google TV, which I know we're going to be talking about a little bit more later. The Fire Stick then came out a year later. So the Amazon Fire Stick was released 2014, and we've seen 4 versions of this released since it came out. And the latest version is the Fire Stick 4K, which, as the name implies, will support 4K streaming. And then actually we have to go back much further than that. 2007 was the release of the first the Apple TV set-top box. We've seen 5 versions of this, with the latest version being released in 2017. So definitely, I think one thing that's really apparent is that these devices have become much more popular in recent years, and they're transforming kind of an old TV into a smart TV effectively, provided it has a HDMI port. I think this is particularly so over the last number of months in light of COVID, and people are watching more Netflix and different streaming services. So we definitely noticed that.
Yeah, it's interesting when you mentioned just how long Apple TV has been around. That's that caught me by surprise a little bit. It didn't really kind of catch on immediately.
I think the popularity of Google Chromecast and probably the Fire TV stick is probably greater even than the Apple TV set-top box. Having said that, there's still a lot of good accessibility features on the Apple TV.
I think the price point of the device is really, when Google and Amazon come along with their iterations of it, it really floored the market on price, because people looked at it and said, oh gosh, picking up something for 50-60 quid. I think the old Apple stuff was 300 plus. Would it be right, Joe? JB?
That's right. Definitely.
Really, like, if someone coming in absolutely cutting the floor out of the market, and even as good a device, for the general run of things anyway.
Absolutely.
Interesting. So let's just have a think about these different individual devices then. JP, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the Amazon Fire TV stick.
Sure, yeah. So the Fire TV stick, it's a very, very popular streaming device. Obviously, as you guess, it's made by Amazon, and let you stream movies and shows from streaming services like Amazon Prime, Netflix, and YouTube. And actually, it does also streams programs and films from Apple TV Plus. The device, physically, it's shaped a bit like a big USB flash drive. It plugs directly into the TV's HDMI port, and it also comes with an Alexa voice remote, which you can use to control your TV stick, either using the buttons on the remote itself, or you can hold down the Alexa voice assistant button, which is at the very top of the remote control, and you can speak to your command that way. It is like, I think the Alexa voice remote is probably one of the best features on the device. And we could do things like I say, you can use direct play, where you can ask for a particular program to play, and if it's on multiple streaming channels, so if, for example, if there's one program on Amazon Prime and Netflix, it'll ask you which streaming service you want to stream from, which is quite good. As well as that, though, the Alexa remote can be used a bit like your Amazon Echo Dot or Echo. If you have a smart speaker, it can be used to do things like check the weather forecast or the time. So it has that kind of functionality there too. As you mentioned, there's been several versions of the Fire Stick TV stick that have been released since it came out. I think it was 6 years ago, 2014, and the latest version is the Fire TV Stick 4K, which supports the 4K streaming. So
tell us something then. We'll come on to maybe just even ease of setup in a moment, but just first of all, in relation to accessibility features, how is the Amazon Fire TV stick for accessibility?
It is very good. You know, I've chatted to several people who use this device as their primary kind of streaming media player, and I mean, let me just take a look at some of the accessibility features that come built into this device. So there's features for people who are blind or who have low vision. One that people could use is called Voice View. So this is a built-in screen reader on the Fire TV stick, and will literally speak out on-screen text as you navigate menus and settings. So yeah, that's actually worth pointing out that you can also use Voice View to set up your device too. So Amazon would consider this device to be accessible out of the box, yeah, so to speak. It can be switched on pressing 2 buttons on the remote control. I believe it's a back and menu buttons on the Fire TV remote at the same time for about 2 seconds, and Voice View will come on, and you can disable it that way too. Once you do it, you'll hear it being announced, Voice View ready. And actually, I think there's actually a video tutorial as well that you can do when you buy the device. So that's Voice View, which is the built-in screen reader. But for people who have low vision, there's a screen magnifier available on the TV stick, and you could use it to zoom in on the screen. And that can be turned on again by pressing a couple of buttons. It's the back, I think it's the back and fast forward buttons for 5 seconds. So you can zoom in on the screen. This will only work when you're navigating the menu or in your settings. It might not necessarily work for viewing video content. It wouldn't. My understanding is it's not compatible. Yeah. Yes, yeah. So there's Voice View for people who want a screen reader, and then there's a screen magnifier too for people who want to zoom in on sections of the screen. And then just going back to August this year, Amazon introduced a feature called Text Banner. This can be enabled in settings, and when it is enabled, it displays a rectangular box on the TV screen with the title of the currently focused item and then related text. So it's another useful feature for someone who has low vision and wants a bit of help navigating their screen. And you can also customize colors as well.
So that sounds very, very accessible. Let's just go over to the Chromecast then, and maybe we can ask Daniel. We've talked about some of the kind of differences with the new Chromecast, but how does the Chromecast stack up for accessibility?
I suppose with the first 3 generations of Chromecast, you know, you had nothing on the device itself, so it was the accessibility of another device that you're using to command the Chromecast to do something. Yes. So I suppose from that point of view, you know, if you're using a home mini speaker to command it to, you know, turn on YouTube and play a song, like that's voice dictation. So that's as good as you know. I suppose us Irish folks with our unique accents sometimes that go a little bit awry, but overall, you know, it does work that way. Now the new version that has come out with remote. Now I haven't actually road tested this device myself, but I'm led to believe the talkback feature, which may be familiar to some of our listeners, you know, that might have an Android phone or an Android tablet, that the talkback feature is built into the 4th generation Chromecast, but unfortunately there is no magnification on it to my knowledge. Now I do stand to be corrected on that if I'm wrong, but to my knowledge,
that's my understanding as well. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no magnification there, sadly. But I suppose with the with the remote, then you have the voice command feature on it. You have your Google Assistant button, so you have that directly from the remote now. I suppose that's a take on what JP was talking about with Amazon and their speak to Alexa, you know, button that's on their remote too. So yeah, it's interesting.
And we were talking about some interesting possibilities with those kind of features earlier as well, just the sort of things that maybe we haven't tested to make sure that they're fully working with this, but just even the idea of communications apps and things like that, like Google Duo, there's potential in there in the hardware, whether or not it's working at present. There's kind of potential for them to be used in that way as well, aren't they, as communications devices?
Yeah, I know the Google Duo app, you can shoot the incoming video section across to a big screen TV. That is doable. So that's something cool, and especially with COVID, and we mightn't get to see all our families this Christmas. And instead of looking at somebody on a smartphone screen that's 4 or 5 inch screen, you can just tap the cast button and boom, it's up on your 45 inch, 50 inch TV on the wall, and you can get to see everyone. I think that's something sweet, and it's lovely to see that coming on. Just one more thing I want to mention about the new Chromecast as well. They have an optional extra plug. Okay, so you get your standard power supply with it, but you can buy an add-on one to replace the standard one, and it has a LAN port in it. Now, for somebody who might have they might have built their house and put in the cabling, network cabling, at the point where the TV is, where they want to Chromecast. You can now actually run that cable into the plug, and you're not relying then on Wi-Fi. You're bypassing the Wi-Fi, because Wi-Fi is traditionally 20 to 25% slower than cable. So
interesting. Okay,
and that's a full reception, but you might be putting it in a room of the house where the reception from the Wi-Fi router is not fantastic. So you do have the facility to run a LAN cable straight to the plug.
Very good.
Chromecast, which is a really good idea.
Actually, that kind of ties in with a subject we're going to be talking about in one of our upcoming live events, how to make the most out of our internet connection as well. So that's kind of a nice little tip with that as well.
Just minefield, that one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll leave the full discussion for another day, I think. Just briefly before we finish up on this, just run out of time a little bit on this part, but just can we get a bit of an overview of how Apple TV is with these things? Because generally accessibility is one of Apple's big selling points, isn't it?
Yeah, they have the voiceover system that iPad and iPhone users will be familiar with already. To have that on their Apple TV platform or device, should I say, because they also do an Apple TV Plus, which is their own version of like Netflix or Amazon Prime. They have their own TV programming. So yeah, it's full voiceover is included on the Apple TV device. Works just like the voiceover on the phone. It's very, very slick. Very, it's what you come to expect of Apple, and I suppose that's why it does attract maybe a little bit more of a premium price. But you are getting that fluidness of voiceover included there on the TV. And I suppose then just to talk a little bit about the Apple TV Plus service, that gives you access to unique Apple content. They've produced a fierce lot of their own TV series, documentaries and films. I think it's €5 a month to subscribe. Now they're not awash with a huge amount of content, but they are slowly but surely building that up. And in addition, all of the programming on the Apple Plus TV service has audio description included.
Brilliant.
Which you might come across some programs on, like Netflix or Amazon Prime, which may not have which all the programs may not have audio description, but they do have that on the Apple TV Plus. So that is another kind of little feather in the Apple cap.
Yeah. And that's quite useful just to have the confidence of it sometimes, because even if it's happening on other devices, not knowing whether it's on a particular program in advance, not knowing that every program has it is maybe a little bit of a drawback sometimes. It's nice to have that confidence. So just finally on this part, what would make someone go for maybe one device over another one? What would help somebody if they're trying to choose which device they go for here?
Good question. Familiarity of existing platforms. Now, most people have an Android phone, or they have an Apple phone, or they might even have Alexa in the house and mightn't have they mightn't be too bothered about what phone they're using. So I think it's familiarity of an existence, of the big three platforms, whichever you use. That will kind of nudge you in the direction of choosing one of these devices. Price will come into it as well. You know, as mentioned, Apple kind of a bit of a premium price, whereas Amazon and Google kind of go head to head on price.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't worry about the content so much, because your Amazon Prime will work. You know, let's say you have an Amazon Prime, or you know, a subscription that will work on the Google Chromecast, that will work on an Apple TV service. So you're not saying to yourself, oh well, I like this program and I know it's only on Amazon Prime.
Yes,
If I get a Google device, I'm not going to be able to watch it. No, that's not true. If you can bring your TV service with you across these devices. So that's and likewise, I think you can bring the Apple at least to Amazon, and I think to Google as well.
Very
So
good.
if you're paying the €5 to Apple, you can bring that across.
That's useful to know. Yeah. Good.
I think JP, Google TV launching their own service too.
That's down the line, isn't it? Yeah. But yeah, I think you summed it up well there. I think kind of that be for someone who is familiar with a particular platform, if someone is a voiceover user, perhaps they'll find the Apple TV box will work really well for them. They'll have the trackpad there, so they can use that to use voiceover. So I mean, that's something to consider. Obviously, it's a little bit more expensive, but if it works well, I mean, it's worth going for. Worth pointing out as well that the sometimes the Fire TV stick, actually only having a look at over the last few days, and the Google Chromecast with Google TV. It's interesting. The Fire TV stick Amazon will often sell it with one of their smart speakers, you know, at a discounted price. So you know, you get the two of them together. Interesting. I was actually on the Google website yesterday. I was looking at to buy the Chromecast with Google TV, and it was out of stock. Now, as of this morning, it's back in stock. So there's obviously high demand for that one.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously availability will dictate a little bit what people can do as well. But that's really useful just to hear some of the comparisons of how the different devices work and how they get on with it, accessibility. That's very helpful. Thanks very much, JP and Daniel, for taking us through that information as well. And of course, if anybody has any questions, just get in touch with the Labs team as usual on labs@ncbi.ie as well. A reminder as well that our live events are posted to YouTube and to all the major podcast platforms as well. So if you want to listen back to that segment on streaming devices or to any of our other content that we've covered in our live events, that's where you can get those. Now, before we move on to our Seeing It Your Way piece, let's talk briefly about this week's quick tips. So what have you got for us this week, JP?
Yeah, that's right. So Jude, one of the notable features that came with the release of iOS 14 and iPadOS 14 this year was the ability for someone using an iPhone or an iPad to change the default email or browser app on their device. So they can change the default email and browser app on their iPhone or iPad. And what this means is that whenever we open up a link or an email address, it won't open in the default Safari or Mail app like it would have in the past. But instead, it will bring us to our preferred email client, which could be, for example, Gmail or Outlook, or our preferred web browser, which could be, for example, Chrome or Firefox, if we have that installed. Yeah. So it might be useful if, for example, if we had a preference to open up a browser in Chrome, or if, for example, we wanted to send all our emails in Outlook. So I think we're actually going to take a look at a video which I prepared in just a moment.
Perfect. Yeah, so let's have a look at that video then. Yeah.
Check out how we can change the default web browser and email app on an iPhone or iPad in iOS 14 and iPadOS 14 using VoiceOver. This is the new feature that became available in iOS 14 and iPadOS 14, and it means that whenever we open up a link or an email address, it won't open in the default Safari or Mail app, but instead it will bring us to our preferred email client, such as Gmail or Outlook, or our preferred web browser, such as Chrome or Firefox. So the first thing I'm going to do is run through how we can change the default web browser on an iPhone running iOS 14. And for this example, I'm going to change my default web browser to Chrome. So the first thing I need to do is open up Settings on my iPhone.
Settings.
And from here, I swipe right until I find Chrome.
Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, mobile data, personal
hotspot. I can swipe up with 3 fingers
button
to scroll down the screen.
Rows 10 to rows 24, rows 40 to 59 of 86. Chrome button.
Okay, so now that I've found Chrome, I need to double tap the screen with one finger.
Allow Chrome to access. Heading.
And from here, I need to swipe right until I hear default browser app.
Location, local, micro, camera, face up, Siri and mobile data, default browser app, Safari, button.
So currently it's set as Safari. I double tap the screen with one finger.
Chrome.
And I can toggle between Chrome,
Firefox. Selected.
Or Safari, which is selected. I'm going to choose Chrome. I'm going to swipe left.
Firefox, Chrome.
Twice to Chrome, double tap the screen, one finger.
Selected. Chrome.
And now Chrome is set as my default web browser. Now I can check this by opening up an email which I sent to myself a little bit earlier. I'm going to go back to the home screen.
App switcher. Chrome. Settings.
And I'm going to open up the Mail app.
Doc. Mail. No unreacts. Demo link. Swipe up or down to select a custom action. Then double tap to activate.
And here there is a link to the NCBI website. Now previously had I double tap the screen with one finger on this link, it would have opened up a page in Safari, but now it should open up in Chrome.
https:// searching with Google Chrome. Address and search bar. NCBI secure button.
And I can see that it has opened up in Chrome. So now I'm going to go back to the home screen. And the next thing we're going to do is go through how we can change the default email app on the iPhone.
App switcher. Closing mail. Active.
So the first thing I need to do here is to go back into settings and swipe right until I find the email app I'm looking for. In this case, I'm going to look for Outlook.
Settings. Rows 10 to 20, rows 20, rows 10 to 28 of 80, rows 10 to 20, rows 24 to 40, rows 40 to 50, rows 55 to 75, Fitbit, mail, button.
So now I'm going to swipe right on the screen until I hear Outlook.
Google, Lazarus, Navi, Net, News Talk, OneDrive, Outlook, button.
I'm going to double tap the screen with one finger.
Allow Outlook to access, heading.
And now I'm going to swipe across to default mail app.
Photos, Siri and notification, background app, mobile, default mail app, mail, button.
So currently my default app is Mail app, but I want to change this to Outlook. I'm going to double tap the screen with one finger.
Selected, mail.
I'm going to swipe right to Outlook.
Outlook.
Now I could also choose Gmail if I wished. If I swiped right.
Mail.
But I'm going to choose Outlook now.
Outlook.
So I double tap the screen with one finger to choose Outlook.
Selected, Outlook.
And now Outlook is set as my default email client. I'm going to check that this is working now.
App switcher, settings.
So I'm going to go back to the home screen. I'm going to open up the Mail app.
Docs, demo link.
And I'm going to send a new email to an email address that's listed here in this message, which is labs@ncbi.ie. So I'm going to swipe right until I hear that.
HT demo email, labs@ncbi, link.
So now I'm going to send a new email to labs@ncbi.ie.
New mail message, button.
Double tap the screen.
Start subject. Text field is editing. Word mode. Insertion point at start. Use the rotor to access misspelled words.
And I can see here that I'm about to send an email to labs@ncbi.ie in my Outlook client. So let's go back to the home screen.
App switcher. Closing out dock.
So that's how we can change our default browser and email client on our iPhone and iOS 14 or on our iPad and iPadOS 14. And thanks very much for watching.
Very good. So thanks very much to JP for this week's quick tip. That's a really useful one for changing the default browser or the default email client on your iOS device. Very good. And obviously we'll hear more quick tips from the team on our next show. So if you have any specific platform that you'd like to hear some quick tips for, get in touch, and we'll try and make the quick tips as relevant to you as possible. Now, it's time for this week's Seeing It Your Way piece. And this week we had an opportunity to talk to Ronan McGuirk about his extensive experience with accessible technology and how he used his experience to get involved in some of the development going on around voice synthesis in the Irish language. Let's see this week's Seeing It Your Way. So this week on Seeing It Your Way, I'm delighted to have Ronan McGuirk with us. You're very welcome, Ronan.
Thank you very much, Jude.
So Ronan, tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, well, at the moment I'm working in the civil service, but if I go back 2 years ago, I initially had sight problems when I was a teenager, and I got registered blind when I was 22, and my sight got particularly bad when I was in my last year at college, and I did a science degree in UCD. So I just scraped through the degree. So that's how when I initially got registered blind.
Okay, and what was the condition that you?
This RP, which
okay,
many people know, retinitis pigmentosa, and the nature of it is it's gradual deterioration. And probably in my last year, I was really struggling to read, which is obviously not good in doing a degree. And so just after finishing up with the degree, really, I realised that I was in trouble with the sight, and I made contact with the National Council for the Blind, as it was at the time. And interesting how times have changed, but at the time, the person I met there indicated that for people with a science background, there were two kind of career choices you might think of then. And one was physiotherapy, and the other was computer programming. Now, at the time, there were no computer programmers in Ireland who were blind. So they were showing that this would be a challenge, but it might be a possibility. And I did a bit of exploring, and I found out that in order to get onto a course with the RNIB over in London, I would need to be able to read Braille at 50 words a minute. I'd need to be able to type at 25 words a minute. I'd need to be proficient with a long cane, and all of which, of course, I wasn't at the time. So I went into, a serious effort to learn typing and Braille and long cane. And cut a long story short, it was maybe 2 years later I finally did the course in London, and after that I got a job in AIB as a computer programmer.
And how did you feel about the overall change? Because your life must have been kind of heading one particular direction that you had planned out a little bit to some degree, and then you're changing direction into another career path. How did that kind of affect you? How did you cope with that?
Well, I had trouble with my sight when I was a teenager, like in school even, it wasn't exactly right. And say, when I left school around that age, I realised I wouldn't be able to drive a car, for example, but I thought I could manage with other things. So I was used to the idea of the sight problem, and it was slowly getting worse. And that probably was the worst time, I would say. By the time I made my way to the NCBI, it was almost a relief, say, okay, I'm not the only person with this problem, and people know how to approach it, and so on. So it was, I would say, things took a turn for the better once I officially got registered, I would say,
Yeah, okay. So when you went on this course with the RNIB, and you mentioned there afterwards that you started working with AIB, was that quite in-depth work that you were doing?
I started off the course the RNIB did at the time. It was a 3-month course in an introduction to computer programming, and it was pitched at recent graduates. So in a way, I was the ideal kind of candidate for it. So when I started in AIB, then I started off as a bank official and started in programming. But I was part of the IT department and a programmer. Like everybody else. Now, at the time, you have to think back, this was 1980, and there was no synthetic speech at the time, and there was no internet, there was no email, it was a very different world. I had to use a device called an Opticon, which is an optical tactile converter. Don't know if it's still around or not, but it was a kind of a camera thing that you ran over the page, and you felt the shape of the letters with your finger. It was very slow. It did work, but it was very slow. Like the most you could do was maybe 20 words a minute reading it,
So that was quite an adaptation in how you did that. And how were your co-workers at the time? Were they kind of very accepting of it, understood it?
I would say they were very good. Yes, a very good professional environment, a lot of cooperation and so on. I suppose initially they must have been a bit skeptical as to, is it possible to do this when you're blind? But they knew that there were blind programmers in Britain at the time. There weren't any in Ireland. So they were aware that it was something that is possible. And so, yeah, I suppose it took a while to get used to it. And then a few years later, I think it was 1983, I got my first exposure to synthetic speech, which was an IBM terminal with synthetic speech built into it. This was before PCs now, but that made a huge difference. It was an awful lot quicker. There's no doubt about it.
So tell us a bit more about the kind of progression of technology that you would have used.
Well, I started off, as I said, before the days of synthetic speech. And so I would have used a terminal, no PCs at the time, and a terminal, I'd run a camera across the screen and feel the letters on the Opticon. That was the first thing. Then moving to the terminal with built-in synthetic speech. And then it was late 80s, I think around 1986 or 87, that PCs started to come in, and I started to use a DOS-based PC with HAL was the screen reader at the time from Dolphin Systems. And that worked pretty well, actually. Then we moved then to the late 80s into the 90s, and Microsoft Windows came along, the first version of Microsoft Windows. That was a bit of a problem initially because the DOS systems were beginning to get quite good, and then Windows came along, and initially the screen readers for Windows were pretty ropey. And then we moved to the various versions of Windows. When we moved to Windows NT and I started using JAWS, that was a big improvement.
Yes.
And I remember at the time as well, Microsoft moved the Microsoft Office from, I think it was version 6 to Office 97. And there was an enormous improvement in accessibility at that time. And I began to think, actually, things are going to get really much better. But then what I found since with Microsoft releases is somewhere 2 steps forward, 1 step back, that type of thing. So, if I list I thought Windows NT was very good. We moved to Windows XP after that. I didn't think that was an improvement. Windows Vista I thought was worse. Windows 7 I thought was good. Windows 8 I didn't really like. Windows 10 I think is pretty good. So it's forwards and backwards. And same with Microsoft Office. I liked Office 97. I liked Office 2003. When they changed to the ribbon, I think that was Office 2007. I really didn't like that ribbon, and I still don't like it, I have to say. But I got used to it now,
Yes, I think that kind of caught a lot of people and made it that bit more difficult. When you had just the pure menu system, there's a kind of logic in your mind that you can work out a lot easier sometimes.
Yeah, I find that more natural to use.
Yeah.
And then I was using JAWS all along. I was working in AIB in various roles and various projects and so on. And in 2011 or thereabouts, I was in enterprise architecture, and I had to use an IT architecture website, and I found it wasn't accessible with JAWS and Internet Explorer. And I got on to the providers of the website, and they insisted that it was fully accessible. And it was a German company, and they were very insistent that it was following all of the WCAG guidelines. So I had heard of NVDA at the time, and I'd done a little bit of experimenting of it at home. I think this was 2010, I think. Anyway, I downloaded a version of NVDA with Firefox at the time, and to my surprise, that worked better than JAWS and Internet Explorer on that particular site. So that was my first notion that, gosh, maybe NVDA is going to be better than JAWS. Now, it wasn't, at that time, NVDA was much worse than JAWS on Microsoft Office, and it couldn't do Lotus Notes at all, but it was better for me on websites. So I used it too. I used JAWS and NVDA for, I'd say, 2 years in AIB, from maybe 2010 to 2012. I left AIB in 2012, and since then I've used NVDA exclusively. When I initially left AIB, I went to Trinity, and I was doing two things. I had a research assistant job, was looking into improving synthetic speech in Irish, and I was doing an MPhil in speech and language processing, which, you know, a master's, and I used NVDA for all of that. And that involved IT work and programming and accessing databases, and obviously Microsoft Office and an awful lot of website stuff. And it worked, you know. I didn't come across anything that I said, oh God, if I had JAWS, I could use that. I wouldn't. So that was the first exposure to that. That really, I didn't need JAWS anymore. And then when I moved to the civil service in 2015, they were asking me when I joined what kind of software did I need, and I just said NVDA. It's free, open source, no charge, and besides, it does Irish. So that's when I moved there. Yeah, so
I was actually going to say there, you were saying about the work in the Irish language synthetic speech. How did that go? What was the kind of progression of that, if you like?
Well, originally, I'd always been interested in Irish, but there hadn't been synthetic speech, which is right problem. And when I started using NVDA in AIB in 2010, I looked at the languages that were available, and I saw to my surprise it was available in Latin. And I put up a bit of Latin text, and it read it using eSpeak. eSpeak is a robotic sounding synthesizer, but the Latin was, to my ear, it was correct Italian pronunciation. And it struck me, you know, obviously it's possible to do multiple languages in this. And I knew in Trinity there had been a lot of work going on an Irish language synthesizer, and they've been working for several years on it. And I said to myself, you know, I bet somebody didn't spend, I bet there wasn't 10 people working for 10 years implementing Latin on that. I bet that was some guy doing it in his attic, you know, over a 2 months project. So at that stage, I had a look at eSpeak, and I realized then that actually it might be possible myself to develop Irish on eSpeak. So I reached out to the developer. It was a free open source project, and he assisted me on understanding how eSpeak worked. And I developed the Irish language in eSpeak myself. So I think it went live in 2013. Into eSpeak, that's the system that I had used. I was in constant contact with the guys in Trinity at the time, because the ABER project there in the phonetics and speech laboratory, they were working on it, and that's why I started with them in Trinity, because I said, I figure I know how to make this work with a screen reader, and we can take it from the stage it's at, which was a very good, you know, speech from it, but it wasn't integrated with screen reading. And that was the project I worked on as a research assistant.
Interesting, yeah, very good.
So it involved testing it with Gaelscoil in it, because they would be the main users of it, obviously. And so my role was testing it and getting it to the stage that it worked with NVDA, and then doing a rollout to the Gaelscoil, and then providing technical support when they had difficulties with it. I also, at the same time, I was working with INBAF, the Irish National Braille and Alternate Formats Authority, of which NCBI is a member, and they were working on the UEB, the rollout of the Unified English Braille. But at the same time, they decided to look at the Irish Braille code, because one of the questions was, do we change the punctuation in Irish Braille to be the same as UEB? And that was the intention. But they were also going to see, were there any other revisions being needed to the Irish Braille code? So I was asked to join with the committee that was looking at that. And I realized that it would be very important to implement it technically, not just to agree the code and publish it, but to implement it technically so that it would work on a computer. So I worked on the free open source project LibLouis, which is the one that NCBI uses to display Braille in Irish. So I was able to implement the Irish Braille code, both the contracted and uncontracted, into LibLouis, so that it automatically got picked up by NVDA. So when you install NVDA now, and in fact it's made its way out to various other devices like phones and so on now, with VoiceOver. So that's the great advantage of free open source software, that when you develop it once, it can get copied and used everywhere. So it's a great way of making accessibility for minority interests, you know.
Yeah, brilliant. So you've been very kind of hands-on in the development of some of these things, and that's given you a fairly unique perspective, I'd say. Just from your perspective of having quite a technical background, being involved in a lot of those things, obviously the screen reader was very important to you. What other pieces of technology would you say have kind of made the biggest impact over the years?
Oh, without a doubt, the long cane. I would say, just from a mobility point of view, I think being able to walk around confidently makes a huge difference. Yeah. That to me is big. Big technological thing. Also, of course, I use the iPhone, smartphone, which is tremendous. I mean, the thing that impressed me most about the iPhone was when it came out day one, it was accessible. It's usually such a thing with new technology. Out, it takes years of lobbying to make it accessible, you know. So I think the the smartphone is a really fantastic, and there's so many apps nowadays, particularly I suppose the kind of apps I use most would have been the travelling ones, you know, like say the Dublin Bus or the Irish Real-Time Rail, or some of the GPS apps, you know, those kind of ones, as well, of course, as library, reading books, and radio, and there's so much available now.
Versatile, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right.
And I think just the point you made there as well about being accessible right from the off, I think that's probably one of the reasons we kind of joke around sometimes with the Apple and Android sort of situation, but being accessible from the off won a lot of fans who probably stuck with Apple for many years, largely because of that priority on access.
Yeah, like that's why I have stuck with it. I mean, I looked at Android from every now and then, and it seems to be improving all the time. My last impression, last time I looked at it, was it's still not quite as good as the iPhone, although I could be wrong because things keep changing the whole time. So, it's an area to keep an eye on, you know.
You're letting your preference be known, but you're doing it very diplomatically there, Ronan.
There's one big fault with the iPhone, and that's it doesn't speak Irish.
Yeah.
And
Seems like you might have a plan to do something about that.
Yeah, it's one of the things on the list, you know.
Yeah. That's part of the bucket list, is it?
Yeah.
Very good. So tell me something. If you were to give a little bit of advice, then obviously, like we've interviewed people with various different ranges of experience in their background as to technology, and we found that obviously technology has made a big difference whether somebody has had a background or not. But from your perspective of like having a lifetime around technology, having a good kind of in-depth understanding of it, if you were to be talking to somebody now who maybe their life has changed a little bit, maybe they're just getting used to sight loss, trying to adapt to it, is there any kind of advice, any tips that you would give them?
Oh dear, now there's a question. well, actually, no. There's one thing I would say. I think two heads are always better than one. And one huge benefit to me in the 1980s was when I got together with a group of other blind people who were starting to work with computers, and we established an organization called VIX. And it was the idea that you could meet up and chat about a technical problem. I always found somebody else would have the answer if I didn't have it. And I found also that even if the other person didn't know the answer, just by me describing the problem would get it clearer in my own head, and I might suddenly get inspired as to a way around it just by chatting about it. So I would definitely say you've got to find other people who have a positive attitude and are getting out there, sorting out things, and engage with them. That'd be, I suppose, the thing I learned most.
Yeah,
I got terrific support and also inspiration from other people. And the other thing is, I found when I started meeting up with blind people, first you get range of approaches, range of attitudes. Some people would say things like, "Oh, the likes of you will never get a job," or "We'll never get a job," and then other people you'd find who were working away on something and were confident they were going to get somewhere. I was always drawn to the more confident or more positive outlook type people. So I'd say look for people who are positive and always try and chat about your technical challenges, because somebody else will have an idea. Somebody else will have come across it before.
Very good. Well, that's brilliant advice anyway, because that kind of makes any previous experience or lack of experience far less important than just being able to integrate with other people as well who can help.
It certainly would. And people sometimes say to me, look, you've worked in IT all your life, you're a complete expert. Well, that isn't really true, because even if you take one program, and I'll just give an example of Microsoft Excel. Microsoft Excel, I know some parts of that extremely well and would consider myself, very well up on it. But I know there's other parts of that, even just that one program, that I don't know that well, and I know other people will know better. So like there's always, you can always learn in a group situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for joining us on the show this week. Appreciate that.
Thanks very much. Cheers.
Very good. So our thanks again to Ronan McGuirk for joining us on this week's Seeing It Your Way piece. Interesting as well, just this comment at the end, just even though he has got a lot of expertise with IT and he would be seen as an expert, if you like, that benefit of being able to benefit from the group experience, the group learning experience, is always useful as well, to exchange information that way. So just nice to get that perspective from Ronan McGuirk this week. Of course, if you have any comments or questions, or if you'd like us to focus in a particular area in some of our interviews that we're doing, you can always send us feedback to labs@ncbi.ie. Or if you have any questions, any technical problems that you want us to cover on the show, we'll include those as well. Of course, that's not the only way that you get support from us. If you have any particular devices yourselves that you want us to maybe give you a bit of support with, the number is 1850 92 30 60 if you want to contact us by phone. So that's 1850 92 30 60, and you can call us from 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, as well as the email address that you have there. You have phone contact as well. Or if you want the wider NCBI services, that's 1850 33 43 53. So 1850 33 43 53, or you can email info@ncbi.ie. And of course, if you'd like to make a donation to support our services, you can also visit donate.ncbi.ie, or you can even sponsor one of our live events if you like as well, by contacting our usual email address at labs@ncbi.ie. That can really help to keep our live events going. Now, just to let you know that over the coming week or two, we're going to be sending out some surveys to some of those who particularly have listened to our live events in the past. Yourselves, as you're listening to the live event this week as well, you'll probably have access to that survey, maybe through our newsletter this week. And we're going to be trying to get a little bit more input just as to what you'd like to see more of in our live events. So if you do get a chance, if you get that survey through, please do let us know what you think and send us back that survey. Now, just before we go, just a reminder of what we'll be talking about in some of our future live events. As we said, our next show is going to be December 15th. So that's 2 weeks time. 2 weeks time at 2:30. That's our next show, and actually our last show of the year. And for that show, we're going to have a little bit, we mentioned last week, it's a little bit of a free-for-all. We'll have an expanded panel to talk about some of the favourite pieces of technology that we've discussed throughout the year. And if you'd like your voice to be heard as well, well then just let us know what your favourite pieces of technology are. Maybe the uses that you've made of particular accessible technology, and we'll be sure to include those on the show as well. So that's coming up in a couple of weeks' time. Early next year, we're going to be talking about how to get the most out of your internet connection. We alluded to that earlier as well. well, it's a little bit of a minefield, but it's also one that's good to have a bit of a knowledge of some of the basics, as well as one or two tips that maybe you haven't heard of before or thought of before. So I'm looking forward to that one myself as well, how to get the best out of our internet connections. So that'll be our first show of the new year as well. And if you want to stay up to date with what's happening on our live events, as well as plenty more, you can sign up to our newsletter. You'll likely get that survey that we mentioned through in your newsletter this week. If you want to sign up to that, that's possible through the website. So you can go to www.ncbi.ie, or you can just drop us an email at labs@ncbi.ie, and we'll make sure you're added to the mailing list for the newsletter as well. So that's the end of our show for this week. Hope you've enjoyed the content and our panel discussions as well. We want to thank our guests that we've had on today, the usual panel as well, but also Áine O'Rourke earlier, and also for our Seeing It Your Way piece this week as well. We're glad to have Ronan McGuirk with us for that as well. So want to thank all of our guests. Want to thank you for listening this week, and we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks' time for our next NCBI Labs live event.